An important element of the Popol Vuh creation narrative is the tradition of an ancient sport practiced by almost all of the old Central American cultures and known now simply as the ball game. The ancient Mesoamerican ball game, usually played on a specially constructed paved ball court, actually presented a sacred ritual drama to the ancient Mayas, which symbolized the ongoing struggle of the forces of negativity against the forces of positivity. If the forces of positivity won, then there could be a new rebirth, a creation. An important feature of the game was the fact that the ball, representing a sacred royal image, the head of the solar life force deity, the maize god, could upon rare occasions actually be knocked right through a special stone ring positioned on the side of the ball court, much like a modern basketball through a hoop. The fact that the ball actually did represent the head of the solar deity is confirmed by an episode of the Popol Vuh in which demonic lords of negativity actually do kill and decapitate the heroic solar spirit of life and maize, Hunahpu, and manage to play the ball game with his head for a little while before it is retrieved by his sibling Ishpalamque and returned to its proper place on Hunahpu's neck. Later in the story, the head of Hunahpu again surfaces as an important element when the demons again decapitate the hero and hang it from the fork of two great branches of a tree, a place that looks like the letter Y. The tree is yet another symbol of the Milky Way galaxy, and the head hanging there in that fork symbolizes a different image of the sun near the Y-shaped dark rift structure of the Milky Way galaxy. To the ancient Mayas, the action of the ball going through the hoop had a celestial parallel in the fact that the male solar presence in the form of the sun could travel through the black hole of the dark rift near the swollen pregnant belly of the Milky Way galaxy at the moment of conception and rebirth. The obvious question arises, how could the ancient Mayas, with rudimentary tools for the observation of celestial bodies, possibly predict the winter solstice galactic alignment 2,300 years into the future? Mr. Jenkins suggests that this accomplishment could have been achieved quite simply through naked eye observation and the ritualization of astronomy. Modern era Mayas, such as the teacher Antonio Ajic, also share with us the fact that these ancient ancestors were enlightened shamans who could accomplish much by combining simple observational practices with profound spiritual abilities. The Maya did it by ritually observing the movement of the Milky Way galaxy on the morning of December 21st every year. It's vital to understand that those ancient people saw the importance of the presence of the galaxy in the sky both while it was visible in the darkness just before dawn and also when it disappeared in the glare of sun as the solar spirit rose up from the horizon following the galaxy. The ancients still imaged the outline of the galaxy in the sky even when they could not actually see it. We must image a time when the ancient predecessors of the classic era Maya celebrated the winter solstice every year with pomp and ceremony as a moment representing annual renewal and rebirth. They would have awaited the rise of the maternal galactic entity from behind the eastern horizon, followed later by the gradual rise of the winter solstice sun, the maize god himself, first father. Annual observations of the rise of the galaxy ahead of the morning sun on December 21st from behind the eastern horizon were almost certainly carried out with the help of ceremonial objects such as a sacred measuring rod. Such objects are known to have been used by the ancients for a number of practical purposes. In this case, such a measuring rod could have been used by the ceremonial leader, being held up at arm's length to gauge simply by eyesight the moment at which the trailing edge of the galactic image reaches a predetermined mark upon the handheld rod, here postulated as a red ring close to the shaman's hand. At that moment, the shaman knew that the sky would begin to become light in anticipation of the coming sunrise, because the rod had been carefully constructed to predict this sacred moment, and it worked perfectly every winter. He knew that by the time the trailing edge of the galaxy reached the red ball at the upper end of the rod, the sun would rise and show its upper rim above the eastern horizon. Although by this time the Milky Way had been blotted out of visibility by the brightness of the sun, he knew exactly where it was, and he could accurately draw an imaginary mental outline of it in the sky just ahead of the rising sun. This ceremony would have been repeated year after year by generations of shamans, before generations of worshippers who enthusiastically celebrated it along with their shaman. They all used the same ceremonial rod. The wonderful sense of certainty must have been magical year after year, as the powerful ceremony accurately predicted the two sacred moments, the first glow of sunlight in the sky, and then the rise of the sun itself. There would probably have been the din of music and the colorful whirl of dancers at the moment when the winter solstice sun showed its upper edge above the eastern horizon, and the comfortable feeling that the shaman's sacred rod could predict the whole celestial phenomenon every year without fail. As time passed, hundreds of years of this same ceremony, performed with the aid of the same sacred rod, established the tradition firmly in the minds of the people. Mythologies probably rose around it, and the songs and dances celebrating the winter birth time became a focal point of the ancient culture. The rod itself probably was mythologized to acquire the mystical essence of divinity. The sacred tool of the shaman indicated all of the crucial elements of the annual ceremony: the symbolic iconography of pregnant galactic entity, the male inseminating solar lord following close behind her into the heights of the sky, the winter day sunrise that symbolized a new beginning. All these elements came together on that morning for those ancestral people to indicate the moment of birth of the new year. Then, one winter solstice morning, as the shaman held up his sacred rod to await the annual miracle, the inconceivable happened. The sky began to lighten before it was supposed to. The blue brightness of dawn commenced before the trailing edge of the galaxy had reached the special mark on the sacred rod. This moment must have been traumatic for the shaman who first experienced it. It meant that something had changed. Soon the sun rose. It also rose ahead of schedule. The trailing edge of the galaxy had not yet reached the red ball at the top of the rod. It was a very alarming situation. The predictive quality of the sacred rod had failed. It no longer worked. This catastrophe was undoubtedly recorded both in writing and in oral tradition, presenting the dilemma to future generations that the sun was now actually rising sooner than expected and a bit closer to the galaxy than it had on winter mornings in the past. Gradually, as the centuries passed, succeeding generations of shamans and ritual astronomers noticed how the process was actually an ongoing one. Using the same sacred rod passed down from one generation to another, they noticed how the sun in one era would rise earlier than the sun in the preceding era, gradually closing the gap between itself and the galaxy that it was following up into the sky. These gradual changes in the position of the sun and the galaxy on winter solstice morning over a period of thousands of years was caused by the phenomenon of precession. It was only a matter of time before these intelligent astronomers realized that as the distance between the two heavenly bodies narrowed, eventually at a time in the distant future they would both rise at the same time. Eventually the sun would rise already within the outline of the galaxy itself. The wise ones realized that later still the sun would rise so far within the outline of the great swollen galactic core, almost right at the center of it, that it would indeed present an image of true pregnancy. This concept interested them greatly. They sat down and did the complicated math and accurately calculated that this conjunction of galactic core and the sun would occur 2,000 years into the future, long after they were all dead, in the year 2012. They recorded their findings and calculations. They devised the great long count calendar to measure this enormous cycle of time, and were inspired to establish a magnificent mythology to expound the metaphysical significance of their calendrical construct. Now in the present era, the predictions of those ancient skywatchers, arrived at through traumatic personal experience as well as careful, meticulous, and inspired astronomical observation, is being realized. The sun is indeed rising squarely within the large pregnant belly of the Milky Way galaxy, although we cannot see her rising back there behind the solar lord because his bright light obscures her from sight. We know she's there, traveling up into the sky on that December morning, in conjunction with the spirit of light and life.